so excited.
Okay, here we go. Cameraman, you ready? All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We realize that with Atlanta traffic, people are always going to be stuck in it. I noticed that we still got some folks out there getting their food, but to be respectful of everyone's time and to squeeze in as much as we can, because we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, let me get some acknowledgments and some thanks out of the way. A lot of you know about Connections by Design, which was started by my sister Cheryl Ayers. For those of you who do not know, this is a Connections by Design event. We've been doing this now, Cheryl's been doing this now for 7 years, but this is our first year where we followed up on an idea that we've had the last few years, which is to not wait a whole year in between events. Normally this is done around the holidays. It's very special. If you've not been to one, mark it on your account. Find out from Cheryl when the one in December will be, and get it on your calendars. It's a must-attend event. So for a number of years, I've said, Cheryl, we can't do this. We can't go 12 months. We've got to do something in the spring. And so here we are now, the second day of spring, and we're having our first ever spring Connections by Design event. And the timing couldn't be better, because I hesitate to call these folks friends and colleagues, because they're family. She's actually my sister. She had been talking about writing a book for a long time. And you know, we've had lots of conversations about it, and the fact that she finally stepped up and did it, I promised her that when she did it, that we would have a full launch, bring the tribe and the other family members together. But I told her, we just can't come in the room and network and talk. You're gonna have to share some of your wisdom. So for those of you who don't know, her billable hour rate is something like 300 plus. So you're gonna be getting like a free hours, a free hour and a half of possible coaching. And it's free, and you get food and alcohol. And so I could not. I mean, I've got butterflies and my molecules are going crazy because we've been talking about this. I've been looking forward to this, and I've got dozens of questions. But this is all about my sister Kym. So let me, for those of you who don't know me, I'm sorry, Shelton Goode. I am currently the Chief Compliance Officer and the Executive Director of Diversity and Inclusion for MARTA, where we like to think of ourselves as connecting people and creating communities. And I will tell you that, you said, well, why are you sitting up there? Because when I was at Georgia Power, I had the good fortune of meeting Kym through a Connections by Design event, and I actually brought her into Georgia Power to help me out with what was a very critical situation. And we had just did our employee engagement survey, and the results between white males and whites overall and females and people of color was statistically significant. And obviously the Chief Human Resources Officer, Chief Diversity Officer says, Shelton, what are you going to do about it? And I says, oh, I just met a great person who I believe can come in and in a very transparent, authentic way, get people to talk. Because at Georgia Power at that time, the lowest rated item on our employee engagement survey was, I don't feel that I can speak up without it hurting my career. So I know they weren't going to talk to me. I know they weren't going to talk to HR. I says, who can I bring in? Now, I didn't know you at the time really that well, but I knew in just a few minutes from talking to her that although there may have been a lot of people, she had the special gift to show up a certain way and then to get people to talk. And she came in and she got for us such rich data that we were able to stem the tide of our African American female engineers who we were losing at a rate of 70%. So make sure you understand what I'm saying. We would hire someone, and within 24 months, 70% of them were leaving. So remember all the money you're spending recruiting female engineers. And we could not, and not only female engineers, but female engineers of color. We were going all the way to the University of Puerto Rico to get these folks, and they were leaving us. And we needed to find out why. The person that got that data for us and also recommended some solutions was this person here. As you'll find out in the course of our conversation, during the debrief, she became my personal coach, and I'll tell you how that happened. Bernard, you may need to close your ears on this one, but no. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. Here's the tone we're going to set. You're going to be listening in on a conversation between two close personal friends. Okay? You can take as many notes as you want, and I'm sure you're going to walk away with a lot of rich insights and takeaways. So you're going to be listening in to a conversation. You're going to hear you're going to learn something about the author, Dr. Kym Harris. You're going to learn a lot about the book, but hopefully you'll learn something about yourself and the fact that emotional intelligence, being authentic, being transparent, being vulnerable are not just buzzwords. These are the competencies for the 21st century leader. And there is no one better at helping coach leaders at all levels in enhancing those competencies than my dear friend and sister, Dr. Kym Harris. So Kym, normally I'd have you do a formal introduction, but let me just ask my first question, okay?
Okay, before you do,
okay, go ahead.
Let me say thank you because Dr. Shelton Goode volunteered to underwrite this event, and so his generosity is what has created all of us, the opportunity for all of us to be here. So I want to thank you for that.
That's me paying her back for all those years of coaching. At $300 an hour, I'm still in her debt. You know how we say back in the day? I just put 5 on it.
And I also want to thank my crew, the women who greeted you as you made your way into the room. So we've got Alicia Newton, Vicki Hamilton, Karen Rhodes. Where's Angela Dixie? And then Angela's friend Christella, and then Stephanie Hudson, and Gwen Wiggins, and Pat Budd. Where's Pat? Did she leave? She's still here? And Pat Budd. See, I was doing it visually, and you're hiding behind somebody, Pat. So thank you, ladies, for being here and helping out. I really, well, more than helping out, really kind of supporting me and holding me up. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, great. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. So in the way of an introduction, obviously your bio and everything like that is out on LinkedIn. You can Google her and get all of that. But why don't you, in the way of an introduction, share something with us that would give us some insight into Dr. Kym Harris. Tell us something we don't know. And I know you're going to give us a part of your official bio, but when you do that, tell us something we don't know.
Okay, well, I don't know. It's all in the book, so if you don't know, you will know. But I'm originally from New Jersey and have been here in Atlanta for over 20 years. My career has been really a nice blend of higher education and corporate America. And I have to say, I say that I grew up in higher ed on the administrative side, but I really earned my stripes in corporate America. And were it not for those experiences, there probably would not be a book. I'm not sure, everybody here probably knows I'm a twin. That's kind of, maybe a lot of people don't know that because a lot of people don't know me personally. But I turned 60 in June, last June. And so for those of you who are working your way towards it, I'm going to sit here and tell you this is what 60 looks like. Uh-oh. Wait, but I have to fess up. So I was at the gym this morning, and I was telling Bernard this, and he really pulled me into reality. I was like, man, I was in the gym, and I was on the Stairmaster, and there was this woman. She looks like she was maybe in her 30s, but man, she was tight. And she had on these little shorts and this little tank top and this little baseball cap, and I was like, I want to look like that. And Bernard said, how old did you say she was? She's in her 30s. And that was a long time ago, right? He said, you look really good, but you're probably not going to get that again. So I was like, that's why I love you, because you keep it real. Thank you very much. So, but there's something for me, I was sharing with Jackie, there's something about being 60. I have this very enhanced sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And I do not want to have any regrets. And so for me, if it's a goal, I'm going to achieve it. Because I just feel like I don't, when it's all said and done, I don't want to feel like I didn't get something done. So maybe that's what people don't know about me. One, that I'm 60, because certainly I don't look it. And two, that I have a very high sense of urgency around it. So.
Okay, so you and I talked about you writing this book for a while.
Yes.
So now that you've finished it, share with us how writing the book has changed you personally and professionally. Because as an author myself, you give a little piece of yourself every time, in every sentence, every punctuation mark. How has it changed you? If, or maybe it hasn't.
Well, you know, people, the question I always get is, so you wrote a book, how does it feel? And what I say to them is that I'm really big into visualization.
Okay.
And so one day I was visualizing this book done. And it was so clear to me, and my eyes were open. It was so it came through so clearly to me, it scared me. I mean, I jumped out of my seat. And so I tell people, I just feel like this is what's supposed to be. This was the vision, and I did what I needed to do to make it happen. Did I answer you?
No, yeah, whatever you want to say.
But tell me the question again.
Did it change it?
Oh, change. I think that what it has done is really helped me practice what I preach in terms of vulnerability and authenticity. So one of the questions that I think you're going to ask is, you know, what was the hardest thing to write about,
Yeah.
or you know, what made you uncomfortable? And there's some things I write in there, and I'm like, oh my God, when my mother reads this, what is she going to think? You know? But, and what are people going to think? But, so what I tried to do was preface it when I was very, very young. So people know I've learned from these experiences. But it's helped me understand the value of vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity. And it's made it easier for me to communicate that and help my clients and other people that I come in contact with experience that and live that. Right, because now I've got stories to tell. Yeah.
You know, you talked about the hardest thing in the book, and you had the preface when talking to your mom. So just a few minutes before starting, I went up to Bernard. Bernard, stand up so everybody can see what we're talking about.
You're making him very uncomfortable. He
I know,
hates being the center of attention.
But I already warned him that I would do this. And Kym, how you want to introduce Bernard?
Bernard is my guy.
He's your guy.
He's my guy.
Okay.
Because I'm too old to have a boyfriend.
So we about to get real here. So I go up to Bernard and I says, hey, bro, I got to give you a little heads up. I'm going to be, you know, calling you out because I've read this book in all the stages as it was being written. She would share it with me and ask for feedback. So. And no matter how many times I've read it, my favorite part is coaches love to give feedback, don't they? But what makes a real good coach? One that can receive feedback. There is a part in the book, and Kym knows, it's just rice. There's a part in the book where she shares in a very transparent, vulnerable way that she had prepared. She had been doing some caretaking for my brother Bernard as he was recuperating, rehabbing. And she was exhausted, emotionally exhausted, but she thought she was doing good. And she had prepared the brother a meal, which included rice. And he gave her some feedback on the rice, that the rice was a little dry.
No, he said the rice is dry. Can I have some butter?
her reaction, which she didn't confront Bernard or you know, explicitly or whatever, but she shares in a very vulnerable way. Well, why don't you pick up the story from there?
Okay.
Because it's my favorite part of the book.
I did confront him, actually, because I was tired. I was like, well, why couldn't you have just told me you wanted some butter? I didn't need to know that the rice was dry, right? And so we got through that, but in the weeks that followed, I shared the story with everybody, because at that point, after the fact, it seemed very funny to me, right? But every time I told the story, I made him the bad guy. Everybody was like, yeah, he didn't have to tell you that, right? But the moral of that story is that we don't always get feedback in the way that we want it, right? So whether it is in a personal relationship or at work, somebody giving you feedback on a project or an observation they had of you, it's important to really absorb it, reflect on it, and find the truth in it, right? And I end the chapter by saying, ultimately, I already knew the rice was dry. I mean, you know, I knew that he wasn't telling me anything I didn't know. And that's often the case when we get feedback. We kind of know, you know, what we're hearing. It makes us uncomfortable because who wants to hear the truth, right? But if we take the time to really think about it, reflect on it, and be honest with ourselves, the idea is just to be better and get better, right? So to respond to the feedback, let people know you're going to respond to the feedback, and ask them for more. Although I did not ask Bernard for more feedback. I get it regularly, though.
So would it be safe to say then that people that are higher in emotional intelligence can receive feedback better or seek feedback out? Let's unpack this whole thing about emotional intelligence, because we just talked about this one competency, but maybe better to just unpack the whole thing. Yeah. So it sounds, you know, emotional intelligence. What the heck is it?
So I like to say it's all about how you show up, and how the way you show up impacts those around you, and that is often our blind spot. How we're impacting others. And it's not just the people that we're interacting with. If Heidi and I are having a conversation, it's not just how is the way I'm interacting with Heidi impacting Heidi, but what about all the people who are observing that interaction, and what observations are they making as a result of that? And so it really is about, how do you impact your environment? How do you impact other people? And how do you ensure that the way you want to impact other people is exactly what's happening? And emotionally intelligent people are very intentional about the experiences they create for those who interact with them. How'd I do with that, Gwen? Is that good? Okay. And actually, Gwen is the person that got me involved in emotional intelligence. And I talk about that in the book because when I first started doing my own thing, she had just started a local chapter for the Society of Emotional Intelligence. And she said, Kym, I really want you to come talk to the group. And I was like, about what? Emotional intelligence? No, I'm not doing that. And for a year, it was a year that she kept asking me and asking me and asking me. And it wasn't until after I read a book, which I think I'm going to talk about because you're going to ask me a question, that I realized that not only did I need to be talking about it, but I need to be figuring out how I could get more of it. So yeah. So thank you, Gwen.
So let's keep that going. You said that you needed to get more of it. How did you get more of it? Was it through your professional experience in corporate? Was it your professional experience as a coach? Was it your personal life? How does a person increase their emotional intelligence?
So I have to say, while earlier on, I didn't know that I was dealing with emotional intelligence, my coach, Deborah Williams, she's like, oh, me, what? Gave me a book by Marshall Goldsmith, Mojo, how to get it back if you lost it, something like that. And I have to say that was my first moment of discomfort, because I was reading some of those scenarios. I was like, ooh, this sounds like me. This is not a good example. But at the time, I really didn't know what to make of it. And now I've lost track of your question.
No,
Ask me again.
we're talking about which do you believe enhanced your EQ, where you are today?
So, and in all transparency, because people often ask me, well, you know, Kym, how did you gain this knowledge? How did you gain some expertise? Well, quite frankly, I'm better at it now than I ever was, but there's always room for improvement. And I have to say that because I lacked emotional intelligence and I had this blind spot, if I had been more aware, I'd probably still be working in the organization that downsized me 10 years ago. Now, probably wouldn't be serving me well because I'm happier now than I've ever been in my career, quite frankly, to be honest with you. But I've learned, they say those who can't teach. So I've learned through my teaching and educating myself around emotional intelligence and educating others, and then by actually working very intentionally to demonstrate strong emotional intelligence. And there are sometimes I'm really, really good at it. And there are other times I'm not, like with my mom. I could be a lot stronger in terms of my interactions with my mother when it comes to emotional intelligence. And intellectually, I know that, but emotionally, you know, I struggle with it. So there are times that I'm really good, and other times when I'm still a work in progress.
Okay, so rather than wait to the end for your questions, I'm going to be coming to you guys periodically throughout the conversation for questions. So you don't have to hold them. So this is kind of like the 2-minute warning. I'm gonna ask her a question, and then I'm gonna come to you guys because I know a lot of you know Kym. Have been encouragers, supporters, and probably have lots of questions of your own. So, but this one is the one that I've been dying to ask because throughout the process, I knew some of the things she was going to touch on. But what I'm most curious about is, tell us, what did you edit out of the book? What is it that you say, you know what, that's just too, I'm not going to be that vulnerable. I'm not going to be that transparent. And you said, stop looking at me like that.
We want to hear that.
I want to hear what you left out of it because I know I have so many personal stories and professional experiences with you, but tell me what you left out of it because I know you couldn't put everything in. Well, and then I'm coming to you guys for your question.
Well, I think if I left one thing out that I probably could have been a lot more transparent about, is more in terms of where my personal opportunities are in growing in emotional intelligence. Like, I think I could have honestly shared more stories about me and my mother, because that's a big thing, you know, because we're so much alike. Bernard reminds me that we look just alike, and I think it's our similarities that cause us to clash sometimes. And I think that, but we love each other, you know, but that's just the nature of the relationship. So I think that probably would have been something that I could have put in there. But other than that, I didn't edit anything out. What I did do is kind of just edited the way I told the story, but I still told the story.
Okay, all right. We're gonna let it get away with that? Okay, all right. Okay, so let's go to, this may not reach, so we'll just do the best we can. How about that? Who has a question for Kym? I know Deborah has one, if no one else.
Jackie has a question.
Okay, Jackie.
And my question really is about your experience in corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say was your defining moment? What experience happened that you realized that if you knew what you knew today, emotional intelligence, you would handle it differently?
Do you see the emotion?
That's how I got a coach. that's how I ended up with a coach.
You got a good one.
I did get a great coach. I will tell you, and this is in chapter 1, so, you know, transparency. I was at the top of my game. I was a senior director. My goal was to be a vice president. I had a team. We were rocking and rolling. We were making things happen. One day I had a meeting with my leader, and I'm giving her an update. You know, we're under budget, and we're on schedule, and everything is going really well. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, she found the moment to tell me that her boss, who happened to be the CEO of this multi-million-dollar organization, thought that I was incompetent. I know. So you can imagine, I mean, Dr. Kym Harris, you know, I'm what? Huh? And I really didn't figure out what was going on, because I licked my wounds for about a month. And I really didn't figure out what was going on and what my blind spots were related to that until after I left the organization. So in my mind, and I know we all do this, first of all, let me be clear. I was clear that I was not incompetent. But I was also clear that there was something I was doing wrong, right? Even though I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And that's where my tagline comes from: competence is more than performance. Because I'm more than competent, but the more, right? When you get to a certain level in an organization, people assume that you know the technical aspects of your job, right? Now they want more from you. And that's often, you know, interpersonal relationships and really getting to know people and spending the time to let people know you and just kind of being authentic. But oftentimes, particularly I think, and you all tell me if I'm wrong, for people of color, we're raised to believe you got to work twice as hard. I mean, if you're going to achieve, you got to work twice as hard than anybody else. And the result is we go in heads down. And that was my thing. And I even told Deborah, it's like, I need people to know that I'm smart. And that was the first thing she came back. She's like, well, that's the first thing people said. She's really intelligent. I still have the sheet of paper you gave me. It's like, she's really smart. However, there's a lot we don't know about her. And when she shows up, we know it's a transaction. We know it's about the work. It's not about just coming in and talking, shooting the breeze. And during the course of shooting the breeze, of course, you're going to get work done. But also during the course of shooting the breeze, that's an opportunity to get some informal feedback, because if people are comfortable with you, they're going to share information with you. They trust you. I wasn't creating those kinds of opportunities for myself. And as a result, a lot of people just didn't know what to make of me. And that's the truth. They just didn't know what to make of me. And at the time, I wasn't sure how to help them know what to make of me. And I kept saying to Deborah, well, what do they want? I mean, I don't understand what they want from me. I'm just being myself. I guess you can relate, huh? You know, because I'm like, well, what more do they want? I'm just being me. Because I didn't know. Now I know. And I make a good living helping other people know. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Another one for her? All right, then go ahead. Go, please.
So, Kym, it sounds like you had some difficulty connecting on a more personal level with the people that you work with. What's that second blind spot you identified, if you don't mind sharing?
For myself?
Yes.
Do you mind if I just repeat the questions for the people in the back that couldn't hear? The question is, she shared with us one blind spot. The question is, what's another blind spot?
Okay, she's going to make me be real transparent. So...
I love that about you.
And I didn't, well, I think it was a blind spot. Well, I'll say I was not as in touch with this as I am now. But I have to say that part of the way I showed up was influenced by my fear. And my fear of, well, what if they ask me something I can't answer? And after all, I'm supposed to have all the answers. And, you know, I'm in this leadership role. I felt confident to an extent, but you know how we're always feeling like we could be more prepared. So that thought of, am I prepared enough, got in my way. And so in some ways, I was almost protecting myself to ensure that if I had some weaknesses, they were not apparent. But then doing that created a weakness, right? So, yeah. That's real talk right there.
Okay, we got another question in the back. Okay, that's great. Just, and just speak up just a little bit so everybody can hear you.
Okay, so Dr. Kym, when I know you said it took like a month. You lived your wounds for a month. I'm sure you were devastated. What was the defining moment? What helped you to realize that you were missing something? And once you discovered that, what was your first course of action?
So, that's a great question, Angela. I can't believe she called me Dr. Kym. She act like she... That's my real estate agent. We done been in houses, looked at other people's dirt together, all kinds of things. I can't believe she ain't calling me Dr. Kym. Anyway. So, even after I got downsized and left the organization, I wasn't convinced that I was the problem. And it wasn't until Gwen asked me to speak at her chapter meeting and after a year I said yes, and after I said yes, I said, okay, now I got to figure out this whole thing, this emotional intelligence thing. So I was coming back from a business trip, walking through the airport, and I saw this little yellow book by Travis Dan Branberry and somebody else, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So I thought, well, let me go buy this book since I'm going to be talking to this group, and let me figure out what I need to know. That was my turning point, because I read that book and I cried, because I was like, I cried for real, like. All these examples of what low emotional intelligence looks like, all they had to do was put my name in there. And I thought to myself, it's unfortunate that no one could explain it to me like this. Because if someone could have explained it to me in the way that I was able to figure it out from reading the book, maybe I could have done something. Well, I know I would have done something different. But at the time, there was no language for emotional intelligence in our organization. We weren't talking about emotional intelligence. Were we different? I mean, well, or did we? Okay. Well, see, it went over my head. That's how much of a blind spot it was. So, because I remember a lot of stuff you told me, but I don't even remember us talking about emotional intelligence. So I probably just poo-pooed you. I'm like, whatever. How much they paying you? Okay. But we learn in different ways, don't we? So, you may have been trying to tell me something, but it wasn't until I actually read it somewhere in my quiet time that I could actually relate to it. And I thought to myself, I can't be the only one with this issue. That's what I thought to myself. And when you're starting a business, I used to always say to Bernard, well, I got to figure out what my thing is. I don't know what my thing is. He was like, Kym, just go do something. Which I did, and get out your head and just go do something. And then I realized that there were other high performers out there, because I was a strong performer. My performance wasn't the issue. I was a strong performer, as evidenced by my performance reviews and my increases and my bonuses. I was a strong performer. And I said, there have to be other people out there who have the same blind spot. And so that's the audience I'm going to serve, because I have the lived experience. I've got a point of view that I want to share with others.
Okay, we got the questions. Hey, y'all doing? Y'all can do my job. Can I do something real quick before? And I promise I'll come to you, because this is all about transparency and authenticity, and about being real in stories. She said that Deborah, who's her coach, has shared with her about emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. Let me show you how connections work. So Deborah Williams had been doing some work with my previous employer, Georgia Power, trying to help culture change work. And again, another person who I admired and could talk to. And I had reached a kind of a crisis And she didn't use the word emotional intelligence, but Deborah told me, well, Shelton, don't let anyone's assessment about your past performance or future potential change what you know to be the truth. But you need to know what the truth is, and you need to act on it. I didn't listen to her. It was easier for me to be frustrated, blame Georgia Power for passing me over for VP for 3 times and blaming everybody else. Then I continued my whining 4 years later, and then I ran into this person, not even knowing that she knew Deborah. And she wound up telling me almost verbatim the same thing. 6 months later, after she wrapped up her engagement, I left Georgia Power to take a VP of diversity job with Pennsylvania Power and Light. That's the power of 2 things. Number 1, connections are by design and the connections that we make, but the power of making connections with individuals that when they tell you something that resonates with you, oh, that's not supposed to happen, that you act on it. And so, in this room, again, are 2 of the best life-changing coaches that I know. We're gonna continue with the dialogue and the questions, but we're gonna also leave time for you to network. Do not fail to take advantage of the fact that you've got 2 great coaches in this room, and to make sure that you connect with them prior to departing this evening. And now we'll go to you for your question.
There's actually probably about 4 great coaches in this room, if we count Karen and Vicky. So.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned that, what I laughed at, because it really resonates with me. Just if someone knew that you're around, it was based on a transaction, even if it's work related.
Yeah.
So it's appropriate.
Right.
But how do you engage in a way that's authentic to you when you're really like, I don't know, like what am I supposed to talk to you about if it's not work and we work together and that's what we're here for. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, how much time do you spend at work? A lot? A lot of time, right? And so I often ask people, how do you make friends? Because you can have, like people have work wives and work husbands. You can have work friends, right? So I'm asking you, how do you make friends?
Through common interests.
Okay. And how do you know that you have common interests?
By actually doing those things. And meeting people, like playing sports, riding bikes, things
But
like
it probably starts with a conversation, right? It starts with a conversation. That's the only way you can uncover and discover common ground, right? And so at work, you do things that if you're an introvert, I always tell people, so you are an introvert, huh?
I'm a social introvert.
Okay. So I like to say that if you're an introvert, do things that draw people to you, right? So do you have pictures of your family in your office? Okay. Do you have little tokens and things from vacations and that kind of thing that you could tell a story about if someone were to ask you, oh, this is interesting, where'd you get this from?
I have a trophy.
Okay, you have a trophy, so I'm sure there's a story. Is it a trophy related to work or a trophy?
Yes.
Okay, you got some trophies unrelated to work that you can bring it on? Or anything. My point is that as an introvert, think about the things that you can do that will draw people to you, that will allow them to ask you questions that will lead to deeper conversations. Because if you're sharing more of yourself, that opens other people up to share themselves with you. But as long as you ain't sharing, they are not going to share with you. I know when I first started at my previous organization, I had no family pictures in my office. I had this little dead twig. It was a symbol of how I was feeling. And then I started bringing in pictures and things, and I'm kind of an introvert, but I'm kind of half and half. But it brought people in, particularly since when they came in for business, what what triggered conversation was they were like, oh, so you do smile. Wow, that's a great picture of you. Is that your mother? Yeah. You know, and so it generates conversation. I mean, a simple question like, how was your weekend? You know, have lunch with somebody that you're interested in and talk to them about where you're from, where you went to school, and where they're from, and where they went to school. It's as simple as having a conversation. Sometimes we get in our own way, we get in our heads. I had a speaking engagement last month, and a young lady asked, she says, you know, I'm one of the few minorities in an organization, and I'm just not sure, you know, like what I should be talking to them about. And I was like, who is them? And my thing to her was, why are you making race an issue? Sometimes we create the wall because of how we are socialized. Socialized with good intention, very good intention, but at some point, we gotta kind of push that other stuff to the side and figure out, how do I create an experience for myself that I can enjoy and invite others into. So I would say to you, pick one person next week to have lunch with and have a conversation. And then repeat that. And during the course of the day, walk around. Go get coffee, do drive-bys, just saying, hey, how's your day going? They're going to look at you a little crazy at first because they've never seen you doing it before. But don't let that make you uncomfortable. They're just going to be surprised. But you got to keep doing it. Consistency is the key. You can't do it and then expect magic to happen. You got to do it over and over again. Okay? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Now, if you will give me your address so she can invoice you. No, it's all good. So, any aspiring writers in here? Anybody in here that says, I'm going to write a book? And you've been saying that for like the past year. Come on, be honest. Look, Kim, look at all those hands. Okay, so let me ask a question. We've all been there. Let me ask a question on behalf of the aspiring writers in the room and those that are not. Did you come across any specific challenges that you can share as you were writing from life to lessons? And what would you do different next time? What are you going to do when you write your next one? Let's put it like that.
Well, first of all, I was traumatized by my dissertation experience. So, and because it's so isolating when you write a dissertation. I mean, you got to go sit somewhere and be quiet and not talk to anybody. And so, every time I sat down to write, it felt like my dissertation experience. And then Bernard said, Kim, it doesn't have to be a novel or a 400-page book. It can be a quick read. Kim, you've already written some things. Can't you just pull all that stuff together and come up with a book? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I can. I've been writing essays on LinkedIn. I'm going to pull all those essays and make them a book. So I found an editor and we fine-tuned it and did some, smoothed it to create some connectivity. So I think you just have to do it. I mean, really. And this book is intentionally less than 100 pages, right? So it doesn't have to be a 200-page book for it to be a book, because the reality of it is, it's a book. Well, I was sharing with somebody in the back, when we opened the box of the books, I just cried. I mean, for real, like I cried. When you get 60, you cry over everything. But I was like, and Bernard was like, well, what's going on? Whoa. I was like, I did it. I said I was going to do it, and I did it. Because it's 80-some pages, but it's a book. Right? So, well, thank you. Thank you. So I would say that if you have a dream or a story to tell, there's value in it for somebody, right? So share your story. I will also say that there is a lot of vulnerability in writing a book, sharing your thoughts, because, and I've shared this with you, Shelton, my question, even as I was writing, was always, is this relevant? Is anybody really going to give a doggone? And then I thought about some of the books that I read, and I thought to myself, I could have wrote this book, you know, because that would keep me writing.
Well, and we talked about that, and we talked about the difference between, like you said, you said, I know I'm competent. So you went from, you know you were competent, you knew you were an expert, but then we talked about being a thought leader.
Yes.
And people throw that
Yes.
term around, but a thought leader shares their thoughts, knowing that everybody's not going to agree,
Right, you're gonna get pushed
that
back.
they're going to get pushed back, that you have to be vulnerable,
Right.
open yourself up for criticism.
Right.
But that's what thought leaders do.
Yeah.
And I said to you, Kym, you're a thought leader now. People are paying you well to come and
That's true.
help guide them. So you have to share that.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
And we talked about that, remember?
Yeah, no, we absolutely did. And there is a difference, because I think the whole idea of thought leadership is this idea of being able to not only share your story, your thoughts about a concept, but also being able to help others somehow connect those concepts to their experience, right? And so I often share with people. I have two brothers. I have a younger brother and I have a twin brother. My twin brother is an academe. He's a PhD from Cornell, and we never let him pray at Thanksgiving because we still would not be eating, right? And he's smart. I mean, I call him a black intellect. I mean, he's way up here. So after he talks, I say, okay, now tell me what you said. What are you talking about, right? And so I think the difference between that kind of intellect and this idea of thought leadership is to make it relevant, right? And I believe that, and I'm thankful for the Cox Mannheim experience, because we're not, which is where I got called incompetent. I rarely share that with people, but were it not for that, I would not be truly operating in my sweet spot. Because the more I do what I do, the better I get at it, and I'm pretty damn good.
Give it up. Okay, so we've got time for one audience question, and then Kym, this is a 2-minute warning for you, because no book launch would be a book launch without a reading from the author. And there's one part of the book that I'm dying to hear it in your voice. And so I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but listen, one quick question from the audience, and then Kym, I got to come to you, because I do want to leave plenty of time for networking before they kick us out. And I know I didn't come to you after her, and I'm sorry, I forgot to. Karen, that's right.
Let's do
Karen, you're a coach too.
and then do Ed.
Okay, okay, Karen, and then we're going to next.
Edwina.
Okay, and then we'll have you read. Okay, Karen.
Very quickly, I just wanted to share the spirit of being vulnerable. I too came from corporate America, 14 years at Microsoft, leading up their global high potential leadership development program. So I had the top 3% of the company in our program that we manage on their succession slate, blah, blah, blah. But as Kym has described herself, I mean, I have my own leadership development firm now, but I was on the other end of the spectrum. But emotional intelligence was extremely important for me as well, because I was the super social butterfly. I was the one helping out everyone. I was the one that had the well-known, job that spoke to Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and Kevin Turner, who was the COO at the time. I was the one who had that. But where emotional intelligence impacted me as a global leader, and I led a global team of over 60 individuals, was that you realize that my bosses wanted more from me. My team also wanted more from me. My peers also wanted more from me. And you can be an over-the-chart extrovert like I am, and people will still want more. More is determined by their perspectives of what more is.
That's right.
But when you are trying to show up as your best self, you can spin in circles like on a hamster wheel, trying to figure out the more for all of your stakeholders that you're working with to be successful. And that's where I was, spinning on a hamster wheel, trying to help everyone and give them what their definition of more is. So to her point where she was heads down working, I was too. Great salary, great bonuses, great everything, great reviews. And always at the end of the performance review cycle, my leader would tell me, everybody wants more. They want to see more from you. So I just wanted to give you the other side of the spectrum, that even if you try to be very astute and do your best to be emotionally intelligent, you have to be thoughtful and have a perspective about managing the definition of more for all your stakeholders.
Very well put.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Very well put. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't know that I want to follow that.
But I did have a question from comments you made earlier in terms of, feeling the need to be the expert in the room, coming from technology that has long since been a challenge for me, feeling the need to have the answers. And then I stumbled across this term of imposter syndrome. And as I look into that a little bit more, it seems to be quite common to women, where we kind of question ourselves, second guess ourselves, and want to be the expert before we raise our hand and speak up. And I'm just curious, in your coaching experiences, are you seeing trends like that lead to commonalities in terms of those emotional blind spots? Because I honestly feel like there's likely things from childhood as a girl that you're encouraged or not encouraged to do that kind of creates this sense of need to be an expert that plays out in certain ways in the work.
That's a good question. That's a deep question. I do think that I worked with a young lady at Emory, and she used to call it, she was a counselor, she used to call it family of origin issues. So I do think there's always the family of origin stuff, that we bring with us. But, and I have had clients tell me, I think I suffer from the imposter syndrome. And we really have to, it looks different for everybody. So you have to kind of unpack it to find out the why and the what of it. But oftentimes it is the same thing. I don't feel ready enough. I don't feel ready enough. And it's really, we have that same conversation. Men will raise their hand and say they're ready, and they might have like a fifth of what's needed, right? But there's something about us as women where we feel like we've got to have it 100%. And one of the things that I've learned is that not true, right? And the thing about being authentic is the ability to ask for help, to feel comfortable asking questions when we don't know, right? And that's the power of relationship building too, because if you've built authentic relationships with people, then you're comfortable asking and seeking what I call thought leadership from folks. And that strengthens the relationship because now people feel valued. Oh my God, she's asked me or he's asked me for my opinion. They really value what I bring to the table, and that strengthens the relationship. So it's being comfortable to be vulnerable enough to admit what you don't know, because the reality of it is, if you're sitting in a room and you're afraid to speak up because you think it's going to be a dumb question or you're not sure how it's going to come across, there are at least 3 other people in that room who want to ask the same question, right? And I always say it takes courage to admit that you don't know, and people admire it because everybody's not willing to do it. And so when you do it, you'll get rewarded for it. That has been what I have found to be the case. You're welcome.
That answer, great question.
Yeah.
Okay, no book launch would be complete without a reading, and I tossed and turned all night thinking whether or not I should let her pick or what I would pick. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna take advantage of some privilege here, and I'm gonna pick.
So wrong.
I know.
That's the one that I would not want to read.
And she's looking upside down, so she knows where I'm going.
Oh, you are
Go
so
to chapter
wrong.
3.
Oh, you are so
Because
wrong.
I have to hear this in your voice. Because I'm just saying, oh my God, not my girl. I can't believe it.
So wrong.
In chapter 3, it's entitled Hello Vulnerable, Meet Reward. and just read the first
Just the first paragraph.
the first paragraph. And
You are so wrong.
let's hear this in your voice. So go back
Oh,
to that
Lord
moment. Go ahead,
have
channel that moment.
Oh, you are so wrong.
Channel that moment and see if this sounds like the Dr. Kym y'all know.
This is the one thing in the book that I would not want to read.
Okay, and this is one of the ones that I massage like really well. So I was a young woman convinced that I had found my soulmate and desperately wanting the unconditional love I was willing to give. My entire body hurt from the emotion I was feeling as I stood in his living room, shaking uncontrollably. With tears running down my face, I asked, "Why don't you love me?" Ooh.
Whew. You are so wrong. You owe me a lot more money. You owe me a lot more money.
I read this.
Ooh.
I thought I had heard all the stories.
Okay. With tears running down my... Oh, I already said that. I'm not going to say that again. I was madly in love with this man, overwhelmed by my emotion and confused by the question. He responded with a perplexed stare. He was speechless. I stood there waiting for an answer he could not provide. His silence was my wake-up call. My willingness to be vulnerable awakened the lucidity in me to move on. My reward was freedom from a relationship that was threatening my self-esteem.
Want to go more?
Yeah, I need to go to the second paragraph so I can redeem myself. Oh, my story highlights how the inexperience of youth can place one in an awkward and uncomfortable situation. The inexperience of youth also gives us the freedom to ask the hard questions even when the answer is harder to hear. Over time, our concerns about what people will think overshadows the freedom of our youth. We become hesitant to share our truth or ask the hard questions. Our concern produces fear, which causes us to hide to avoid feeling vulnerable.
Ladies and gentlemen, in From Life to Lessons, Living and Leading with Emotional Intelligence, Dr. Kym uses her life and career to highlight the importance of balancing strong performance and relationship management. She begins by sharing a painful, confident, shattering career experience and turns it into lessons about what it means to be emotionally intelligent. Throughout the book, Dr. Kym's mantra, competence is more than performance, provides one example after another of how to discover, develop, and exploit our more. Through a collection of essays, Dr. Kym shares practical strategies and tips for demonstrating emotional intelligence and shows its impact on career growth, leadership effectiveness, and personal relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend and sister, Dr. Kym Harris. Now that I've totally ended my relationship with her, I will not be getting any more coaching from her. Deborah, you free?
She's mad at you too.
I know she is. Trust me. I know she's in. Trust me. I can't believe what the bill's going to be to make up to her. Okay, so a couple quick commercials, then we're going to let you guys connect. Again, this event is brought to you by Connections by Design. Not just a networking experience. This is a relationship experience. Over the last 7 years of Connections by Designs, we've seen people make transitions from corporate into launching their personal businesses. We've seen people write books. We've seen people handle the loss of loved ones. I wish this is for our friend Angela, who's not here. A lot of you guys know Angela. So, and it's Connections by Design that we have developed not just a family or collection or of colleagues, but what we like to call a tribe. Those people that you can call up and they'll go to war with you. So, again, the next one is not, unfortunately, until December, but find out from Cheryl when that is going to be. Put it on your calendar. Do not miss it. If you do not have a book, you absolutely positively have to go get a book. In fact, why don't you pick up 3 or 4? Pick up a couple for your family members. Pick up some for people that work for you, your colleagues. We all can benefit from these stories of vulnerability and authenticity and realness. I know that I have already ordered 4 dozen, and I'm just gonna, it's Women's History Month, so we're having an event tomorrow at MARTA where we're inviting the public in to learn more about women in transit, and we're going to give, I don't know how many people are going to show up, but we're going to give out hopefully all 48 to just people that come in. That's how powerful I think the book is. I'm sure if you haven't already read it, when you read it, you'll feel that way too. Brother Bernard, thank you for letting us put you on blast a little bit. Cheryl, thank you again for helping through Connections by Design, making events and connections like this possible. And Kim, we'll give you the last word, and then we're through.
I just really want to thank everybody for coming out, and if you haven't purchased your book, I'm assuming you will purchase your book before you leave here.
Yes, you'll sign it.
And I will sign it for you. But I think what I want to leave you with is this idea of figuring out, first asking yourself this question: Am I giving people the best version of who I am? Whether you're an entrepreneur dealing with clients, someone working inside of an organization dealing with direct reports, bosses and other leaders, am I giving everybody the best version of who I am? And do I have blind spots that I need to address? And take the time to explore those questions, get the feedback you need, and have the courage to make the changes. Because I believe that no one should ask you to be someone you are not, but someone does have the right to ask you to show up the best version of yourself. And sometimes that takes work. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.